went to the Michigan State Fair with my family, and with my mom and dad. And at that point, I was an only child. I didn't have a sibling yet. She was in the works. But at that point, I was the princess of the universe. There had never been anything bad had ever happened to me. I hadn't lived through anything rough. And I was about to have the most amazing day that was probably going to see me through some pretty rough times, and I'm super glad that it happened. I had never been to a fair before, and I had never been on a carousel. I didn't even know what they were. I had no idea it was this crazy thing you get on, and it's animals, and it goes around, and it's music. And so we stood in line, and about like 4 or 5 people ahead of us in line, there was this man, and he was a very tall man. I remember him having this really deep, boomy voice and like this crazy twiddly mustache and this big hat, and he was wearing a jacket, and he had elbow patches, and he was just really like sunshiny, gregarious, laughing guy, and he was kind of talking to people around him, and there was this little boy that was standing with him, and because they were in front of us, he was using his father as a shield, and he was peeking at me. And you know, I'm standing with my parents, and I'm looking at him, and we're looking at each other. And I remember him, he was the sweetest human being I had ever seen in my life. He had these huge green eyes and like this long curly blonde hair. And he kept looking at me, he just kept staring at me from the other side of his father. And I had never been so thoroughly gazed upon as I was in that moment. And we just had this eye contact, and we just couldn't stop looking at each other. And then he was tugging on his dad's shoulder or his sleeve, and you know, they had a little conversation, and finally his father said to my parents, my son, Michael, wants to know if your daughter will ride with him. And my mom was like, you know, what do you think of that? And I was like, yeah. Please. And she, you know, told him my name and stuff. And I remember and then there's this moment where you're waiting for everybody to get off the ride and for everybody to stop. And we just couldn't stop looking at each other. My heart was just pounding. I was just pounding. And when it was our turn, and they opened up the little gate and they let everybody come in, we held hands. And I just remember looking at, we just looked at each other. That's all, we didn't even say, we never said a word. We just looked at each other. And I knew him, and I knew I had known him forever and ever and ever, for all of time I had known him. And when we got onto the ride, we picked, I don't even remember what the thing was, the animal, I don't know, who cares, but all I remember was we were holding hands and they'd move up and down. So we were like, you know, like having to really struggle to hold on to each other, just making eye contact. And our parents paid, the ride stopped, and nobody got off. And then it started again. And our parents had paid for us to go on again. And none of the kids had to get off, because we were just like totally locked onto each other this whole time. And then when it was over, we never talked at all. We never spoke to each other. And when it was done, I remember him walking away, and I was walking with my mom, and you know, we kind of looked at each other. And instead of being really sad that this was done, I felt like I will find you again, and I'm so glad that I know you exist. And we will find each other, and this will happen. And so I'm filled with this, and instead of being sad, I'm just kind of like, wow, life is huge, and this is amazing. And so we're walking together, and I'm walking through this main thoroughfare, and I'm holding hands with my parents, and I'm all blissed out, and this old weird woman, like stepped out of a fairy tale, like, you know, the old crony lady who was kind of I saw her, and she saw me, and we made eye contact, and then it was just like, boom, she was right in front of me. And she knelt down in front of me, and she put her hands on my shoulders, and she went, "You have a very old soul." And then she was gone. Did she say to you? And I was like, "I have an old soul." It's cotton candy. So that was kind of strange. And then following that, there were some pretty weird, crazy parts to my life, which I think I only got through because I knew that this other thing existed, and I knew that there was this other experience available, and that I would be okay, and I would make it. And then in about like 3rd grade, I lived on the street in Detroit called Ashton, and there was a street called Penrod not very far from that. And the people who lived next door to us, their family had an ice cream truck, And they, if you were good, then the dad would use you for child labor for the price of an ice cream cone. You basically ride the ice cream truck and pass it out. And the only reason I mention this is that this. We'll skip that. So that happened. We're going to fast forward for a second. I went to Laurie Junior High, which is also, it's in Dearborn. And there was a boy that went to school with me who I remember seeing in the hallway. He was a year older than me, and I remember being like, he's adorable. And he was very tall and incredibly shy. And I knew his brother because his brother was really good friends with my sister. And his mom came to the school one day, and because Sean was gifted and didn't fit into a regular school setting, his mother became very active with the PTA, and she came in one day, and for some reason I looked at Kathy McGettigan, and I thought to myself, if I could pick a mom, if I could just make up a person, that's the woman that I would choose. I would pick this woman. And I remember walking past, she had cupcakes, and I was like, whoa, like, she's perfect. And I remember walking past a PTA meeting where she was giving it, somebody was talking, and she said, I know, let's ask the children what they want. And I just thought, oh, you are my fantasy mom. I love you, Miss McGettigan. So then fast forward some more, I'm at Fortson High School, and there's this guy who, I know him as Mike McGettigan, and he's a year older than me, and he's adorable. He's incredibly tall, and because he's tall, he stands with his legs apart, and he stands like this, like he doesn't want to, don't see me, and he's like really shy, and he's really nervous, and I wish he would make eye contact with me, because I know he's looking at me, but he never ever makes eye contact with me. And so that just doesn't go anywhere, although I did circle him in our high school yearbook, and I was just like, sweet. You know, I just, for future reference, I remember that I liked it. So fast forward some more, I go out of town, I come back to town, I call my friend Eric, and I'm like, hey, I'm back in town, you know, what are you doing? And he goes, I'm going to go hang out with my friend Mike. And I said, okay, you know, come and pick me up, and that sounds great. And we get there, and we get to his house, and all of a sudden I realize, I'm like, oh, I'm in Kathy McGettigan's house, I'm looking at her shadow box. She's my fantasy mom, and I'm in her house, and it's awesome. Everything I ever, there's instruments everywhere, and seltzer bottles, and it's just like, it's Candyland. And then I finally got the first chance to make eye contact with Mike, and I remember I had put my coat on the coat rack, and I turned and I could see him, and we made eye contact for the first time, and all of a sudden I realized that I had known him, and I had always known him, and that we knew each other, and we were supposed to know each other, and that we were going to be friends for the rest of our lives. And so that meant that we couldn't make out or sleep together, because that would ruin everything. And so we spent a year and a half spending every single second together. Every second. We would get in the car, and he would go, okay, and through Detroit. He was the best co-pilot to go through a weird place, because he was so huge and so sweet that, like, you're just totally safe. And we get in his car, and he'd go left or right, and I would go right, and then he would turn and just take adventures and have this great time, and I was completely in love with him. But I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to ruin it, and I had a fiance, and it totally sucked. And so I went, and he came to my wedding. He watched me marry another human being. And he knew it was going to suck, and I knew it was going to suck. And, you know, we left my wedding. He said, I need cigarettes. And I was like, oh, it's the Kroger, but this is the country, so I'll just go with you. And I got into his car in my wedding dress, and we drove to the store to go and get cigarettes. And there was a part of me that thought, I know that I just married this man, and that your wife, or whatever you want to call her, and this beautiful baby that you guys made are at my house at my wedding, but can we just keep driving and not come home? Let's just go. But that's so inappropriate, so I didn't say anything. And then I watched him get married to this horrible, ghastly woman. Sorry, this is all going to be recorded. Yes, I don't like you. It's out there. And 8 years goes by, and we don't see each other at all. And then I am in a relationship with somebody else, and it's the tail end of it, and he's not into it anymore, and I know that, and it's, you know, kind of sucks. But I'm going to see Kristen Hirsch, who I love, from a band called Throwing Muses, which probably none of you know who they are, but I love her with all of my heart. And she's playing at the DIA, which is the Detroit Institute of Arts, which is this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful building that I love, and I can't believe I get to go and see her, and I'm in this building, and I call Mike, and he says, yeah, I don't have anything going on, and I haven't seen him for 8 years. And so this means that not only do I get a hug